Hi, welcome to a look at Christmas Vacation and some life lessons that we can learn from the movie, but more importantly, behind the scenes of the movie. In this particular case, Christmas Vacation is written and created by John Hughes. It is a John Hughes film, but unlike other John Hughes films, he decided not to direct it. That directing job went to a young and rising director. His name, Christopher Columbus. Now, Chris Columbus had gotten the film and had a lot of directing chops that he was beginning to develop and looked like he was a perfect fit. But Chris Columbus got involved in the pre-production meetings and found out that he had a problem. The problem that he had was with Chevy Chase, who was Clark Griswold, the star of the film. Matter of fact, Chase was such a force and knew exactly what he wanted to do and was so dogmatic that he wasn't willing to listen to the director, and so the two began to clash. And so here is a young director who's been handed the keys to what is destined to be a hit, and he thinks it's going to be a hit, and yet he knows at the same time he's never going to be able to work with the lead actor, who, of course, is essential to the project as well. What to do? Well, Chris Columbus agonized over the decision that he had to make. But what he did was he resigned and quit his job as director of National Lampoon's Christmas Vacation. So Chris Columbus goes down in history as the guy who chose not to direct the Griswolds in what became a Christmas classic. That job went to Jeremiah Chechik, whose career had a number of films to his belt. He'd done a number of commercials. He steps in and becomes the director, and it works. Sometimes we have to understand the roles and the relationships and who's most important and who's not. And for Chris Columbus, he realized that the most important person in that Christmas Vacation film was none other than Chevy Chase, Clark Griswold. Would it have been great if they could have worked together? Sure. Would it have been a super story if that would have been the background of it, where it was just a super fun behind the scenes, we're all family story behind the scenes? Sure. But Columbus wasn't going to be a part of that family. Matter of fact, he created tension between himself and Chase, and it wasn't going to work. And so he made the decision that ultimately the decision was a good one. The decision to step away allowed Christmas Vacation to become wildly successful, put the actors in an environment with a director and a star that they were going to mesh, and they made movie magic. Knowing your role, knowing what you bring, and knowing your limitations, all are important lessons in this thing we call life. It's also important in your celebration of Christmas. You can't do everything you want to do. You're not going to be able to be all the places you want to go. You're not going to be able to be all things to all people during Christmas, no more than you can any other time of year. But it is the most wonderful time of the year, and so we get stretched pretty thin. But remember, what you're called to do above all else is to celebrate Christmas, celebrate the birth of Christ. Let all the celebrations be an accent, a decoration, if you will, of the birth of Jesus. Oh, and by the way, before we wrap up this episode, before you feel too bad for Chris Columbus, because he was a friend of John Hughes realized that he was making a choice for the good of the film. The good of the film was going to be Christmas Vacation, a classic. And so John Hughes, because he's a good guy and he likes his friend, decided to give his friend the opportunity to direct another movie, another Christmas movie, which also became a classic that you might have heard of. Chris Columbus, oh, he's a director of the John Hughes film called Home Alone. Who knew? I look forward to joining you next time as we continue our look at Christmas Vacation.